Welcome into the Harvest Friends. We are here to bring you the confidence and clarity you need to be a disciple and make disciples in the everyday places of life. I'm Abigail Wilson.
I'm Andrew Stroud.
I'm Keith Jones.
Hey guys, so we are here today to talk about kids in church. We have been kind of teasing you guys with this episode for a couple of weeks, but we really are going to talk about it this one. So we're excited. It's going to be good. But first we have a few announcements.
So the first announcement, guys, is the same one we've been talking about. We've got a weekly newsletter that goes out called Harvest Highlights. We would love for you to receive it. A big part of what we're trying to do is be in the harvest ourselves, but then also put out to our listening community content, resources that we found helpful either in our local areas or that we've come across the internet. And so that is all found in our weekly email Harvest Highlights. You can get it for free in your email inbox every Sunday morning. All you've got to do is sign up, and you can do that by clicking the link in the show notes to this episode or in the description to this video. Or if you just like to make things difficult, you can go to our website, intotheharvest.org/newsletter, and you can sign up there. Keith, what do you got for us?
Oh, yeah. You find yourself locked at home, not doing anything? That's okay, friends. We need your help. We need reviews. We need to get this podcast out there. So if you are on YouTube, watching this from YouTube, or however you watch your podcast, please leave us a 5-star review, the highest you can leave, if you think it's that quality. But more people are going to see it, and more people are going to be engaged. So me and my wife, Steph, we're actually not on social media right now. So if you haven't seen us in a while, I do apologize. But we're going to do our reviews too, guys. So hope.
I'm excited. I actually haven't written a review for us either. So maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll review us. I'll review you guys.
There we go.
Oh, boy.
And then you can review me. That'll be fine. Whatever. I mean, as long as it's a perfect score, that's all that matters.
Exactly. Let's go.
All right, cool. Friends, yes, do those things. But now let's get into the topic that we have at hand, which is very close to my own personal heart because I have 3 kids who are under the age of 10. Keith has little ones running around at his house. Andrew has tons of experience with children through the ages. And I think the big thing that we want to discuss today is how to have church with our kids in the harvest. And that is something that maybe all of us have just started doing in the last few years. So it's very important, and it's a topic that comes up a lot. In fact, you guys listening have sent us messages about this one a bunch, so we know you care about it too. So we're going to get into it. But what we want you to know is that we kind of based our conversation off of a YouTube video that we all watched by some friends of ours. We're going to link it in the show notes, I believe. Is that correct? Zach's
Yes.
going to do that for us. So our friends, the Wilsons, up in New York State, put together a video where they just talk about how they incorporate kids into their own church. And it's very detailed and it's really great. It's just their own personal experience. But we thought that would just be a nice place to start. And we can kind of riff off of that of maybe things we do differently or things that we thought were really great. And then you can also, when you have time, go and watch that video as well. I can't remember how long it was.
I just watched it recently. I think it was about 12 minutes.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, that was right.
So it's not a long thing. And so we definitely recommend you doing that. And we'll be referencing it during our conversation. So let's start. Guys, would you mind, so you both watched the video, and then maybe you could just share with our listeners how maybe the way they do things and how you guys are doing things in your own church, how they differ. Like, let's start with differences.
Yeah, I can start us off, and then Lakeith, why don't you share your thoughts as well? Right now, we've got 2 different home churches, and then every 3 or 4 weeks, we'll do a combined gathering. And I think, Abigail, we should say just off the top here that children in the harvest is a pretty big topic. It's really something that goes, or children in church is a big topic. It's something that goes Monday through Sunday. We're going to be talking specifically about how do you deal with children in your Sunday gathering, or maybe you gather at a different time. But most house churches are gathering once a week. A lot of us gather on Sunday mornings, and we're talking specifically today about how do you handle children in your house church gathering, because that's probably one of the top 3 challenges of being church in the harvest and doing home church for sure. So for us, we've got the 2 different church gatherings that meet on Sunday morning. And then, like I said, we combine the groups typically about once a month. And the way that one of the differences I saw between the video that the Wilsons did and the way we've been practicing things is they do a 3/3 format for their Sunday gathering. And ours is more a 2 seconds, I guess. We have two major divisions of our time together. We start off with something we call Share and Prayer, which is an open forum where anyone can share. It's kind of our time of worship. So people will share where they've seen the Lord at work in their lives or in the world around them, giving praise to Him. Or if there's something that they're anxious about or there's a need they're aware of, then they can share that as well. And then we'll spend time praying together as a church family. And then the second half of our time together is time at the feet of Jesus, where we'll spend time in the scriptures together, asking the Lord to teach us from the Word of God. And we'll be learning how to follow Him together as a flock. He's the Good Shepherd, and He's leading us. And we typically have we rotate the leadership for that time. Different, more mature members lead the discussion of that passage. And so that was one thing that was a little bit different, is just the format that they have. And that came into play because they handle their time with children based on the 3/3 process.
Yeah.
So Keith, anything that I missed that you would put in, or other differences you saw in the video?
Yeah, honestly, the big difference that I've seen is that they're a little further ahead than us, like especially with our Tuesday night groups and some of our group 2 as far as our Sunday home gathering. I think they're really intentional with the kids, and for me, this was a big learning experience. I think we've had a lot of questions and a lot of things just come up over the years, but they did a good job of just being intentional with the time with the kids. And so I think that was probably the big difference. I think it's been a challenge for us to be intentional because we just haven't had too many groups like ours. Hearing from another group that meets in the home on a week-by-week basis with children was really helpful. And, having little kids of our own, I think we got a little bit more guidance and directional things we could try to implement and see how it goes. And then others that may not, work.
So how old are the kids in your churches, those 2 church gatherings that you have there?
Yeah, so our oldest son, Aiden, is 9, and then Avery is 5. She'll be 6 that's kind of crazy. And then the McCoys, Levi is 3, and baby Mary is 1. So I got to say, they've modeled. A huge shout out to Heather and Ben McCoy. You guys have rocked. Been great watching them and how they've set up their kids. It was very similar to the No Place Left video we watched from the Wilsons. So they've been a good inspiration. So I think for us, the Jones family specifically, we're going to try to tighten up some of those things and implement them so that we can, join that process. Try to be examples as people, introduce kids into the community.
So maybe to those listening, you haven't watched the video yet, so we're going to kind of tell you some things. And I'll maybe do that just because ours is very similar to what they're doing. So I'll talk about that. So essentially, from the beginning, Brett and I really wanted to implement our children as much as possible. But there's always that push and pull of either you have people in your church that don't have kids, and boy, do I just look in their eyes and see the fear and also the horror when they see your children like running at them, and you're like, oh yeah, sorry, they're loud. And so you have that kind of sense of like apology just going in, but you also know how important it is to disciple your children and have them be a part of your faith and the church body. So that I think is always the balance that we're all feeling all the time, is that kids are just by nature a little bit difficult, and add a little extra. And then also kids are amazing and awesome and are really like tiny sponges that just pick up spiritual truth really quickly and can memorize scripture really fast and really can add an amazing addition to your churches. So we have done different things over the years. For a long time, we just had babysitters like come and take care of the kids, almost like a nursery type situation when they were little. And then as we added children into our mix, we had some teenagers for a while, and they were just obviously part of our normal church. They were just like everybody else. And then when we started to have like those, I guess, elementary age kids, is really when we started to be challenged that we needed to do more and help them more, to be a part in some way. So that video that the Wilsons did really helped Brett and I just talk about how we wanted to incorporate our kids. So just what is a reasonable expectation of different ages. So for like Justice, who's 4, we felt like the expectation there was, let's try to get Justice to be quiet for longer than 2 minutes. Well, that's hard. But it's possible. And so we have like other small children in our church. And so we really did try to incorporate them into that first little part of church, like intro time of, prayer and singing, of like you guys, like praise and worship time. Like that's about all they can handle. And that's about all we ask of them. And then as our kids are getting older progressively, we try to add them in for longer periods. I always said, and it's always bad to say things before they've, like you say things about being a parent before you actually reach that age. But I always said that when my kids got to the age where they could read, then I would make them be a part of our time in the Word. But until then, it was really like harsh to make a kid sit through like a whole discussion on scripture when they can't even read it. Yeah, it's just rough. Other people have different opinions, but that was mine. But then that happened, and my oldest learned to read, and I was like, whoo, this is going to be a lot harder than I thought. He's over there playing with all the other kids, and now I'm going to be like, hey, dude, I'm going to need you to come out of that awesome fun room, come in here and sit with us. Like that was like a rough thing to do. So, but God really took care of it for us. We had another 9-year-old as well. All the parents kind of got together. We were like, we're doing this. We're going to give them like a goal to reach of like how many like studies they have to do with us. And by then they'll be used to it, and we'll give them a treat at the end. So we used bribery because we're awesome. And so we did that. And like, it was peer pressure. The 2 9-year-olds, they were both having to do it. So 2 people were having to miss out on fun. From week to week, they would like, one of them would be excited, the other one wouldn't. And so they always kind of helped each other get excited and into it. And it was just a real godsend to have that happen. So yeah, we do look a lot like the Wilsons Church. Our older kids are in the middle part of our time. The Wilsons, they do the 3/3 process, and the last part of the 3/3 is practice. Yeah. And I think their kids come back in for the practice. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think they say something like, we invite the children to come back in to practice. Well, I think they must have more spiritual children than we do, because we invite our children to come back in and practice. And literally the only thing our children like to practice is the Lord's Supper. And I bet you all know why. So we'll invite them back in, and they are all like, we're okay playing things. Bye. So anyway, that was very long. I'm sorry. But hopefully people maybe can get a better picture of sort of how we're asking and dividing our time for our kids. So what were some other things that stuck out to you? Keith, you were saying you noticed that they were maybe a little farther along. Give an example of like something that stuck out to you that you would want to implement.
Yeah, just the fact that their kids are looking at being a part of the fellowship. That's something that they can take outside into the harvest too. Because I know a big part of our episode is children in the harvest. So I think the fact that their kids they're trying to help their kids see like, hey, I should be sharing this with my friends, and it's okay to quote verses to my friends or to help them see, the good news. So I think that was really cool that they were so, I guess, intentional with their time with the children that they wanted them to walk away in the same manner that the adults walked away with something to share with somebody else. So I think that was pretty eye opening.
Yeah. I think for us, we realized that having them sit in that first part of church where everyone is kind of sharing about how their week went and people they shared the gospel with, and, things going on in workplaces and out in the world, the kids started to see that that was something that they could do. And we also, after watching that video, started asking our kids. So everyone kind of has a turn to share. And so we started giving our kids turns to share, which is harder than you think. Because once you give the kid a floor to speak from, if they're an extrovert, it's going to be hard to take it back. But that's all part of the learning process. But yeah, just having, like, saying to them, hey, Aiden, how was your week? Like, how was your time? Were you obedient to God this week in some way? And they have like a Bible verse to share or something that kind of makes them feel a part. And we implemented high fives into our church. So, and we do it to the adults too, which the kids really love. So if I was obedient in the last week and like maybe there was, I don't know, like let's say I wanted to share with my neighbor and I did it, and I would say, hey, I shared with my neighbor. Then like all the kids like come over and like give you a high five, and it's like very exciting. So
that's smart.
We had to add some like kid friendly implements into it, but hey, the adults like it too, right? So
yeah, I think that's one of the big differences between traditional church and home church is the big value is actually integration and participation. And so one of the things that's a challenge is having children in your gatherings, but it's also one of the high values that we have. Jesus said, let the little children come to me. And I was reminded as I was thinking about our conversation today that, it was a young boy who had the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. So there were children who were hanging out with Jesus and listening to his teachings, and they were going all day. But the expectations are gonna need to be different, and the way it plays out is going to be different. And one thing that can they actually mentioned this on the video. Lindsay mentioned this, that she, because of her background in traditional church, when they first began to transition to home church, she was really stressed out because what traditional church sort of teaches you is that there needs to be this really serene experience, at least unless you're charismatic. If you're charismatic, it might be just the opposite. Like there needs to be some sort of exciting event happening. But for a lot of churches, the goal is to have a very quiet, peaceful, serene service where you sit and you listen and you're not distracted. Well, home church, the value is where there's a lot of interaction between the people who are there. And, you want your children to get the benefits of that as well. And so I think it really comes into the values that we have, that having children with us, to have them integrated, it is a challenge, but it's also one of our highest values. It's something that we want to see happen.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this, Andrew, when we were talking about Francis Chan's book. And I was so excited to read in his book how he said that, church in the wild, so to speak, is going to be wild. And I highlighted that because I felt it so strongly. Like it's still hard, even to this day, after 7 years of doing church this way, that I still kind of miss, or at least expect somehow that church is going to be this quiet, reflective time. And it's not that way at all anymore. My quiet, reflective times are at a different time. Like they're just not what we think anyway.
Right. But so there's the other side of that coin too, and they talk about this in the video as well, which is so one thing that has to happen, I think, is that our expectations and our ideal has to shift. It's got to move more towards, we want to have the children with us, and we accept and embrace that it's going to be a little more chaotic. But that's good, because it can be good, because we actually want them to be engaged. We don't want to just export them to the nursery or to children's church where they're out of sight and oftentimes out of mind. We actually do want them to be integrated in what we're doing. But the flip side of that is you don't want just chaos. You don't want the children to just completely take over the gathering. And I thought they had some really good thoughts on that as well, in terms of what to do on the day of the gathering, but also what to do before the gathering even starts in your parenting. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that. What did you guys have any thoughts about what they shared there?
They're very structured. They're like the intentional super types, which, boy, major props to them. Like Lindsay talked about how she practices with her kids for sitting for certain lengths of time, and they like kind of build up. And I guess she's doing that like throughout the week, like it's super mom.
See, we did that, Abigail. Like, have you done that with your kids? I know Cindy and I did that when our kids were younger.
I'm like starting to sweat. I'm getting PTSD. Friends, just know that my background from the Navigators, God bless them, the military navs, was this thing called blanket time. And did you guys do blanket time, Andrew?
Oh, we did it all. We did blanket time. We did chair time.
Anyway, I did it. So, guys, look it up. It's a thing. And I did it, and I've taught people how to do it. I think since then, and here's where I maybe differ from what she talks about in the video. And I did it too. So it's a great thing. What I have found is the more we are in the harvest, as in with broken and baby Christians, or like just seeking the Lord, the level of discipline, excuse me, the level of parenting period is way, way different from like our awesome like nav communities where everyone had been a Christian like forever, and we were all learning from other people who'd been doing it, and they taught us how to do blanket time with our children, etc. So I had to really take a huge step back, not just in like teaching that to other moms or like sharing that with them, but just really trying to take baby steps as far as both modeling and expectation for families that come into our home. So I think what she has to say in that part of the video is really great if you personally are like ready to take on the challenge of teaching your kids respectful quietness and discipline. It's really, really good. I immediately did start to sweat because I knew like just those that come into our home and what our expectations of them really are. And it's different. So I don't know what you guys think about that, as far as even your community probably looks different from ours, but I felt like we had some families through time, like not even in our church now, that their kids were just crazy little tornadoes, to where like we hid stuff before they came over. It was like, hide any toy that you really care about, because prepare for some toy destruction. And so I think we've had to learn, what can you set as an expectation in your house church for that time, that most children can know that this is an expectation for this time, whether my parent is like this all the time or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think it's both and. Sorry, Keith, go ahead and jump in there.
No, I was just saying I agree with Abby. I think that I love the point that you're bringing up, because people do come from different backgrounds. I know for us, having a blended family, with 2 kids, and trying to integrate some of the stuff is not as easy as it would be. So I think I'm able to take a deep breath. Like, okay, the early church was trying to figure out, was it okay to drink and get drunk beforehand and eat all the food. So came, like, so there's the struggles that we have. I think it's okay to extend grace in that area and to know that these are good problems to have. We want our children to be a part of the service. It's going to come at a cost, but that's okay. Like it's a process we're willing to endure. So, but there has to be some patience and grace in there.
Yeah, that's why I say I think it's both and. I think for us as parents, there's so much that our kids are so much more capable than we give them credit for. And I've often said that one of the top goals that you should have between the age of 0 and 6 is to impart self-control to your kids. And one of the simplest ways to impart self-control is to teach them how to sit still. And it really isn't something that takes, I don't think it's something that takes a whole lot of effort, but it does take consistency and being intentional with your kids. And I think they even mentioned the video of starting off with 5 minutes, and I think that that's true. So teaching your kid to look at a book or giving them some materials and letting them draw or color, and then just doing that throughout the week. And it's really not, I don't think it's really that big of an ask. So for us as parents, I think we should be doing that with our kids, especially if we're leaders within the church, if we're modeling not just the Christian life, but parenting. And then I think the flip side is, yes, as you're reaching people who don't come from that background or who already have kids who maybe they're 7, 8 years old, they haven't been taught that self-control, or maybe they're just super high energy. We need to accommodate that. Our expectations for the gathering need to adjust based on the people who are in the gathering. So that's why I think it's both and. Like for us as parents, it's something that we can definitely do and try to model, at the same time appreciating that other people are coming from different backgrounds and have different value systems.
Yeah, I wrote an article about this a couple weeks ago. Maybe we can also link it here as well if you haven't had a chance to read it. Just kind of the things that I picked up about kids in church in the harvest. And one of the things I think is the struggle, and that's kind of where this plays a part, is, the comparison of comparing your kids to other kids and, being like, oh man, like their child is just happily sitting there and mine is running around like a crazy person. And it's really having to just face that and not just ignore it or pretend like it's not happening, but just address it in yourself. And either one, I can do a better job at home, like 100%, and fix this problem. Or two, I'm not going to. And so now I'm going to have to be okay with the consequence of that. Like those are the two options. And I think, our part as the body of Christ meeting together is then modeling. So we, are doing those things, Andrew. We are trying to discipline and teach our children boundaries and all these things at home. And then just like casually talking about it in the church setting. And then also, by the way, like full on doing discipline in the middle of church. It happens. So
it does happen.
It really does. So I think being okay with that too, of like having to pull a kid out and have a conversation or put your hand on their leg to remind them, that they're talking for too long or whatever. I think those are all like part of then others just soaking that in, whether they have kids already and their kids are not to that point yet, or, like just, we're all learning this together. This is truly church. Like the church family is a family that is meeting together and then dealing with life together, which kids are life. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Abby. I'm glad you brought that up because you're going to watch other people, like you're going to learn from them. So I can remember, I would say probably 5 separate instances, I can't talk right now, where Andrew had to discipline his kids during a gathering or at home or something. And I got to observe how he did that. Fast forward several years later, here I am, and I at least have something to go off of now. I have seen it real time, real freakouts and real action and how he responded. So now I can mimic that and see what works and what doesn't work. But I do think that's important to me now, is that you have to model not only our lives and our devotion to God, but the way we interact with our families and the way we discipline our families for the next generation to see too. So
yeah, I think now that I have kids and they're very much a part of church, and I see our older church members and our single church members, and just how everyone loves our kids is really does bring everyone together. We're obviously doing Zoom church right now, as you probably are incorporating that into your lives as well. And it was really sweet this last week. One of our people in our church was like, I really miss your kids. Like, because they were just off in a different room at the time. And so they're like, bring them in, And so Chris Justice came in and did a monologue, and, it was, but I do, it really does bring a church together to really sharing all of our parts with each other, even the really messy stuff. And kids usually fall into that category. All right. Is there anything, we don't have too much time left. Is there any more we want to discuss in this video? Like maybe one solid takeaway that you personally, you don't have to, whatever you want to share.
Well, I think for me, maybe one of the takeaways, I like their idea of doing the 10-minute tag out.
That was mine. You just took it.
Oh, sorry. Well, I haven't applied it yet. So it is I really do want to try this out because we've been trying to do the sign up. Hey, these adults will watch the kids this week, and we'll just do the rotation for the time when the kids are dismissed, so to speak. And we've got our kids are pretty young. I'd say we've probably got, Keith, I don't know off the top of my head, 5 or 6 below the age of 5. So they probably aren't going to be able to sit through at that age. So there's going to be some supervision that needs to happen during our gatherings. And so they had the idea of, instead of having one person take it for the whole event, set a timer, and every 10 minutes just have a new volunteer go out and keep an eye on things. So I thought that would be maybe a more workable model, because we have been having some trouble with the sign. It just takes, it's a whole another level of organization that you have to try to keep up with. And so I like the idea of just show up the day of, and then just take turns kind of rotating out for the 30 or 40 minutes that the kids need some supervision. So I really like that idea.
We love it. I'll just add that was mine as well. We took that from the video over a year ago and started implementing it. And it works really great. It works great not only in our small house churches, but then when we have our big gatherings once a month, we still do it there too. And so it's implementing a whole bunch of other kids and a whole bunch of other parents, but we all do it the same way. And I think my favorite things about it is, one, it takes away that whole sign up sheet business, which is just so stressful. Like maybe somebody misses a week, and then, as they get off track and blah, 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 it's just a hot mess. And then I think having just 10 minutes, you really don't miss too much of the discussion. So I always felt like it ended up with the kids so much of the time, and I would get a bad attitude sitting in there with a bunch of children just sharing my personal feelings. And so it was just really, it's nice just to be able to share that load. And I think all the parents are happy to do that. Just, 10 minutes is not long. And, depending on how many kids and parents you have, it could be just that 10 minutes or maybe just 2. So it's really great. You guys should try it. That was clutch.
Yeah, those are good, guys. That's a good one. I think for me, I just realized that we have a huge responsibility and a huge window of opportunity to kind of set the pace because we haven't over the years, and we haven't been here before. If you go back 2 years ago, life was completely different, so now we're here. It's the New Testament, they have this opportunity to be like, hey, Paul's writing them hey, you're not doing well on this, but if you address it now, take advantage of this opportunity, you can really capitalize. So I think I'm just motivated to do all the little things. I do think that maybe working from home, probably not every day, but having some times where we're doing reading time or something where they are being a little bit quiet, because I think we do realize as leaders that we're going to have to set the pace and be the example, so we can't be too lax in this situation. But it's fun. I like a challenge. It's cool. So
Yeah, I think, Keith, that's a great place to maybe end. If you are listening and you have not implemented any of these types of things of like really intentionally adding your kids into church or what that looks like, do watch this video for sure. It's a great place to start. But also, if you are at home during this quarantine time, maybe just take a day to do pretend church with your kids. So you do it exactly like you do it when you meet together. So we, do the 3/3. You guys have 2/2, whatever it may be, but just do a kid version of it and talk about how you're like, this is what we do. Do you know what mommy and daddy do when we go to church at wherever? Well, this is what we do. Let's all do it together. And then the kids really get a sense of the whole thing, even though they probably won't be incorporated in all of it, but they'll understand at least the core aspects of church. And then you can talk about as a family, like, what are the parts that you could be a part of when we meet at Mr. Andrew's house or wherever. And that's a great way to just use this time, as while we are all like hanging out at home. Well, we're really, anyway. So, hopefully that is helpful to you guys listening. We know this is a huge topic. You probably have questions. We'd love to hear them. You can always leave us a comment or a call-in question. We would love to hear about it. So let's keep this conversation going. Guys, it's been fun to talk about. I really appreciate all of your insights as always. And we'll see you again next week, friends.
Yeah, next week, guys.
All right, laters.
Bye.